You're listening to Rendezvous with the Writer with Bobbi Jean and Jim Bell, only on LA Talk Radio.
Welcome to Rendezvous with the Writer. Special guest. Whoops.
That's
We're
okay.
getting ahead of time here.
We're live.
We're writers and readers meet.
And story is everything. We're having such a great time, and we're so delighted that you are joining us tonight, whether you're listening live, watching live, or you catch this on a podcast. We thank you for being with us. The music that opened the show was from the Hot Texas Swing Band. There's the album it's from. And we're excited because band founder Alex Dormont will be with us next week, and we'll be talking Western swing music with Alex. And who do we have? Who do we have with us tonight? We're so excited.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, now we're gonna forget. We have Henry Park and Sherry Monahan.
Welcome.
We're glad to have you folks with us.
Hello.
Hello.
It is the first Thursday of the month, and so of course we are always delighted Henry Park is with us from True West Magazine, and we also have, who's also a columnist among many other things with True West Magazine, Sherry Monahan, and they are back with us right now. Sherry, where are you calling in from? Where are you tonight?
I am in North Carolina, and I am sitting on a boat in a marina.
You're not getting seasick, are you?
It must be calm seas. I don't see any rock and rolling going on there.
It was a bit breezy, and the boat was moving a little bit earlier tonight, but it's calmed down a bit, so we'll be good. If you don't see me swaying, I'm good.
We'll just sway with you if we.
There you go. Everybody can have a drink, and we can all sway together.
Oh, well, yeah, have a drink, and we'll just all sway together. Henry, where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from the San Fernando Valley. Van Nuys.
Yeah.
And I'm the only one swaying here.
I know, when you wish a Californian something like "May the road rise up to meet you," you don't really want to wish that for a Californian.
Yeah, it happens often enough. Yes.
Well, do you
We saw these two folks not too long ago.
I know. Last month, Sherry, where did we see you?
At the Tucson Festival of Books.
Yes. What booth were you in?
I was in the Will Rogers Medallion Award booth. They have annual awards every year for the best of the best in Western writing, from poetry to food books like I do, to women's books, to screenplays, you name it. If it's written and set in the West, then, it can be entered for an award. So we were there representing that and ourselves, because we were all award winners who were in the booth.
Yeah, it had a really lot of really fun people to chat with in that booth.
We did.
And then the day before we saw Sherry. Where did we see you, Henry?
Oh, in Tombstone.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the name of the book event. But, yes.
Tombstone.
Oh, was I perhaps hawking this?
Yes, you were with Doug Hawking. Yes, you were. And
Hawking.
Hawking
that-
with Hawking.
I think I double checked, and its proper title is the Tombstone Western Book Festival.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the way those words go
Festival
together,
of
right?
Books. Right.
So that we make sure that people know for next year. And Sherry, you were on a couple of panels too at Tucson.
I was on one panel about the writing food, about the signature dish book that just came out. And then I was on a panel with my friend Chris Enns, and it was about wild women of the West. And I was talking about the Mrs. Earp book and the California Madams book that I wrote. And I got to tell you, I've never had this happen before, but there's these, areas where you go to wait, and we went up to where we were going to go speak in the room. And the Saturday event, I walked in, there were about 30 people in the room, no big deal. And then I went up to the event for the Wild Women event, and apparently that's a good name, because we got there and people were lined up out the door, around the corner, and down the stairs. And I looked at Chris and I went, I wonder who the lucky bugger is that line is for. And the escort turned around and went, they're for you guys. And we went, no way. Do they think Craig Johnson's in this room?
We couldn't get in.
Yeah, we tried. We
were shocked. I mean,
it was standing room only, and they had to kick people out because of fire laws. I'm like, that's never happened to me in my life. And it was great.
It was wonderful. Yeah. We were excited for you all.
Sorry you missed it.
Well, that was an event that was unticketed. Like, there wasn't a way for us to reserve, tickets. It was just, come, and we thought we got there in plenty of time. We knew not to get there just like right before. But we had gone to a panel before that, and we'd met those authors and had those books signed. We still got to about 20 minutes before, and we looked at the line and said, "There's no way. I guess we'll go eat."
It was a spicy panel, I'll say that.
I bet. Well, it was wonderful. Those were both great events. So let's see, Henry, let's just start with you a little bit. What's going on with filming in the West? What do you want to talk about?
Well, let's see. I've been busy. I've been writing articles and interviewing everyone's kids. Des Arnaz Jr., Rory Calhoun's daughter, Robert Mitchum's daughter, Harry Carey Jr.'s daughter. So I've been busy with the second generation. Starting off with some serious but good news, on March 13th, a New Mexico jury convicted Hannah Gutierrez Reed, the armorer on the Western Rust, involuntary manslaughter in the death of cinematographer Helena Hutchins. She'll be sentenced on April 15th, and she could receive a maximum of 18 months in prison. I think this is great news because Reed has given the film industry, especially Westerns, and especially movie armorers, an undeserved black eye. Since Western movies began in 1903 with Edison's The Great Train Robbery, and that's 121 years ago, uncountable millions of shots have been fired in front of cameras, and before this, there was not one example of anyone on an American movie set firing a gun at someone and killing them. And I'll just add that it's absurd that Alec Baldwin is again charged with any crime in relation to the Rust shooting. I applaud actors that take it upon themselves to check a movie's gun loads before firing them. But by and large, actors are not experts on firearms. That's why movie sets have armorers. The TCM Classic Film Festival is back in Hollywood from Thursday, April 18th through Sunday, the 21st. Check out their website. They have, as always, a wonderful array of films that are almost never shown in theaters. The packages are insanely expensive, but if you go on a standby line for a movie that isn't that popular, that's in a huge theater, you can often get in, and those individual tickets are only $20, and with a valid student ID, only $10. Among the screenings that'll be of particular interest to Western fans, on Friday they're showing Mighty Joe Young, and no, that's the 1949 follow-up to Son of Kong, and admittedly not a Western, but it stars Ben Johnson. And it's introduced by John Landis, director of not only Animal House, but The Three Amigos. At 12:15, Leonard Maltin is introducing the 1936 version of Three Godfathers. This is not the John Ford, John Wayne version. It's directed by Richard Bolesowski and stars the movie's Boston Blackie, Chester Morris, in the John Wayne role, plus Walter Brennan and Louis Stone when he was playing outlaws instead of Mickey Rooney's father in the Hardy Family films. It's very tough, very gritty, very good. That night at 6, it's John Ford's 1936 film, The Prisoner of Shark Island, starring Warner Baxter as Dr. Mudd, who treated John Wilkes Booth after he assassinated Lincoln and was sent to prison for it. The cruel prison guard is the great John Carradine, and his son Keith Carradine will introduce the film.
Wow.
Saturday morning, they're showing a great 35 millimeter nitrate print of Annie Get Your Gun at the Egyptian Theater. At 6:15, it's West with the Women, with Robert Taylor leading an all-female wagon train directed by William Wellman and written by Frank Capra. Sunday at 9:30 a.m., it's 1932's Law and Order, the first talkie version of the gunfight at the OK Corral, starring Walter Houston as Wyatt Earp and Harry Carey as Doc Holliday. And at 3:15, they premiere the 70 millimeter restoration of John Ford's The Searchers, which was introduced by the brilliant director of The Holdovers, Alexander Payne.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has anyone heard of the LA Breakfast Club?
You know, it's kind of sound. Yeah, it sounds sort of like there's something in my mind about it. But
well, it's a fascinating organization.
Yeah.
It's been around for 99 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's an educational club and community organization that began in 1925 as a way for local business people, showbiz people, and others to meet over breakfast. And it's evolved into a group of friendly people who share a love of the history and culture of LA and beyond. They meet for breakfast every Wednesday at 7 a.m. at their clubhouse in Griffith Park, the Friendship Corner.
Okay, that's why it's familiar. Griffith Park. Yep.
Nice, good. They call it a club, but everyone is welcome. Every studio head belonged. Walt Disney, the brothers Warner, Sam Goldwyn, Darryl Zanuck, Cecil B. DeMille, and folks like Mary Pickford, Max Sennett, Ronald Reagan, Jack Dempsey, Joe DiMaggio, Tom Mix. Just an incredible history. When they began, fraternal organizations like the Shriners and the Elks were all the rage, and the Breakfast Club kind of parodies them with their own set of goofy rituals and songs. They have a different guest speaker every time, and I've attended maybe half a dozen times. Usually there are books and things to buy. I've seen presentations about the making of Casablanca, silent movie comedian Harold Lloyd's gigantic Christmas tree, a Japanese-American man who went from an internment camp to being a world-class animator. Just yesterday, Mallory Lewis, daughter of Sherry Lewis, was there performing with Lamb Chop.
Yeah, Lamb Chop.
Yes. Great breakfast, great organization. If you're interested, go to labreakfastclub.com, check out their programs, and buy a ticket. Coming up next is a program about video. It's a thriving video store and revival house in LA. TCM's Dave Carter will be there discussing the upcoming TCM Festival. And on Wednesday, May 1st, just by chance, I will be there discussing my book, The Greatest Westerns Ever Made and the People Who Made Them.
Here we go. Woo-hoo!
And you can read all about these stories and so much more at www.henryswesternroundup.blogspot.com.
Thank you, Henry.
Thanks, Sherry.
Sherry, in the current issue of True West, your column, Frontier Fair, your title is Missouri Barbecue. Is there anything you'd like to share about that article?
You know, every article that I write, I like to try something unique about a particular state or a region. And, you know, Missouri, you have barbecue. I mean, it's synonymous with it. And they have some really good beer there. And, you know, that's just what I think of. And so that's how I come up with the different recipes and the different subjects that I write about. Was there anything in there that struck you as particularly entertaining? I mean, I always like to hear what my readers think about what I write.
Yeah, there was. At one place, at one event, they had a pit 60 foot long. How many people were they going to feed in that thing?
You know, a lot of times, you know, they would dig these monster pits for like big holiday events like July 4th or a church. You know, churches raised a lot of money in communities, and if they were going to have a fundraiser, they would do something like that. So,
yeah, and I thought it was interesting that barbecue recipes started showing up, let's see, in newspapers like in the 30s, I think, which I thought was the barbecue started appearing in newspapers for sauce and events, I guess I should say.
Yeah, more of the big events rather than, I mean, people have been cooking over open fire and putting sauces on, but not anything like an organized, you know, effort to like, hey, we have barbecue. This is a barbecue sauce, and let's have an event around it. So yeah.
Right. Well, we want to talk a little bit more with Sherry about her books. Do you want to do the intro that you have for Sherry?
We do have an intro.
We do have an intro for Sherry.
I forgot all about it.
Well, we've been having such a great time, like just Gabfest here. We have to remember we, you know, have 50 minutes, so.
Yeah, it's like an intro to the end of the show.
No.
Special guest tonight, Sherry Monahan began her writing career when she combined her passion for food, travel, and history. She penned her first book, Taste of Tombstone, in 1998. That same passion landed her a monthly magazine column in 2009 when she began writing her first column in True West magazine, Frontier Fare. She's a culinary historian who enjoys researching the genealogy of food and spirits. While there is still plenty to explore about frontier food, she's expanding her culinary repertoire to include places and foods from all over America and beyond. She holds memberships in the James Beard Foundation, the Authors Guild, Single Action Shooting Society, and the Wild West History Association. She's a professional genealogist and an honorary Dodge City Marshal.
Yeah.
Lookout.
Marshall Monahan. And the two books that we're talking about tonight, the first one is the Tombstone Cookbook, Recipes and Lore from the Town Too Tough to Die. And then her newest book, which is what we'll start with, Signature Dishes of America. The full title includes recipes and culinary treasures from historic hotels and restaurants. And if you are listening tonight, and you're not necessarily considering yourself a gourmet or a foodie, these books are just packed with, yes, great recipes and wonderful photographs, but history is on every page. Such interesting tidbits.
Yeah.
And facts and things that you wouldn't necessarily know, that it's really, you're getting a taste for the Old West, but you're bringing history alive. So don't go away. Stay on the show and then go buy these books. So let's. Oh yeah. Hey, that's okay. Sam, you know what? Do you want to go ahead and do the ad for the bookshop where you can find Sherry's books? We'll do it a couple minutes in advance. Sam, if you're
here at the Out West Shop, we're passionate about the American West, the truth and the myth. We're purveyors of fine Western goods. We scout for unique and distinctive apparel, accessories, home decor, and general merchandise that are a reflection of the Western lifestyle. We hunt for unique artisans and craftsmen who are inspired to create decorative art you can wear based on their own love for the story of the West. We round it up and bring it to you. Check out OutWestShop.com when you need anything Western.
And we're back.
Welcome back to Rendezvous with Writers. Special guest Henry Park and Sherry Monahan. We're talking to Sherry about her two books, and
Yeah, go ahead.
got to wondering, Sherry, we kind of talked about this the other night. Which came first, writing or cooking? And when did you start?
Or history.
Or history.
My favorite subjects in school were cooking classes, history, and English. So I guess at some point it was bound to all collide together and come into what I do. When I was in high school, I wrote for the school paper, and I thought about being a journalist, but I just didn't want to do that kind of writing. And then I wanted to be a chef and own my own restaurant. So I went to a community college and I did restaurant management, how to design menus, how to order, that kind of stuff. That was kind of cool. And then I went to a restaurant school. I lived in South Jersey and Philadelphia that had a restaurant school. And my mom took me and we went through the whole, initial, get to know the school. And we got to the end of the program and the chef comes out and he talks to us and he says, I'm going to tell you about what it's like to be a chef. And then towards the end of the whole talk, he says, now what I'm going to tell you next, probably half of you are going to leave and never come back. And my mom was sitting next to me and he said, so expect to work nights, weekends, holidays, 80 to 120 hours a week. And I looked to my mom and I went, we can go now. so now I write about it and I play in my own kitchen and I love entertaining and cooking for other people, but I wouldn't want the stress of being a professional chef. That's not for me. So I just write about it.
Yeah. You, I think that you had a visit. You were kind of traveling through Arizona at one time with your husband, and you drove into Tombstone. And what happened?
Basically, we back in the early 90s, 92, 93, around that period, we had gone to Tombstone, Arizona, and pulled into the town. Really didn't know anything about it other than it was down in the southern Arizona, and I wanted to go to ghost towns and other places. And Tombstone, okay, let's go check it out. And I remember, like this was yesterday, we had a white rental car, and back then you could drive your car down Allen Street, which is the main street in Tombstone. Today they've got it closed off, which is really makes it feel more authentic, like it used to be back in the 1800s. No cars there, you can take great pictures. But back then you could. So I remember I had cowboy boots on. I remember putting my feet on the boardwalk, and I just thought to myself, I've been here before. I lived here in another lifetime. And I just felt connected to Tombstone somehow. And so we got on the plane, and I was thinking to myself, I'd love to be connected to this town somehow, but I didn't know how. And then I started thinking about, well, what did Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday eat when they lived back here?
Yeah.
And so that sort of started me on my research. And, then my first book came out a few years later.
Yeah. Both cookbooks that we're going to talk about tonight are organized very nicely in a very easy way to access the information, especially if you're a cook and you need a breakfast menu, you need a bread, you need a salad, you need a really good drink, you need a dessert. And so rather than having them arranged by like the establishment that the recipe came from, you have them arranged almost as though you were creating a menu. What makes it very accessible? Why did you decide to do it that way?
Well, my first book, Taste of Tombstone, which was, I look back at that book now and go, ooh, that was my first book. I think every author does. And that book was laid out. The first half of that book was history, chronological, and then the back half was recipes set up sort of like they are in this book. And it was an okay format, but a lot of the bookstores were like, well, is it a history book or is it a cookbook? Where do I put it?
Yeah.
And so the more I started working on recipe history books with recipes, my publisher and editor, we kind of came up with the format of, look, these are cookbooks. People love to cook. So lay it out like a regular traditional cookbook, with your appetizers or your breakfast and your side dishes and your mains and then your desserts and your beverages. And so that's kind of the format that I use for all of my books going forward, so that it functions like a cookbook if you want to cook, like you just mentioned, or if you just want to breeze through the history, it makes it so much easier to do that. And it works really well. At least I think it does, so that you get a little of both.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to, you got some great questions. Jim's got some great questions.
I know we can't wait this out. We talking about Tombstone now. We were kind of thinking, we're back in about 1880. We're kind of thinking, what was cooking all about back
Yeah,
then?
because both books deal with some turn of the century cooking. Yeah. So, like, what was going on in the kitchen?
Well, I like to look at it this way. If you think about your kitchen today, right, is you go in, you flip a few switches, you push a few buttons, and you've got your oven is preheating, and in like 10 minutes, you've got a 350-degree oven. Or your dishes are dirty, you pop them in a machine, and you push a couple of buttons, and an hour later, you got clean dishes. You got a microwave that like cooks stuff in minutes, right? Back in the day, you didn't have all those conveniences. You had to really go in. You had these big giant cast iron stoves and ovens. You would have to put wood or coal or whatever fuel you were using, get that thing up to temperature, and there's no temperature on it. So if you ever read an old cookbook, it's cooking in a warm a slow oven, cooking a hot oven, cooking a fast oven, and you would have to know where that is next to the fire. Like, okay, right next to the fire is a super hot oven. You want to be able to cook a pizza or a loaf of bread, quickly. But if you want to cook something longer and slower, like a pie or a cake, you got to put that in the oven in a particular place. That's just the oven, and then you have to regulate, the heat's coming up from under the cooktop where you're going to cook, same thing. If you think about, hand whipping, if you whip egg whites or you whip a cake batter, you didn't have a little machine that, or you're whipping it until your arm falls off. I mean, they must have had some serious guns.
Yeah.
Back then. I'm telling you, men and women, for whipping stuff. If you think about all the conveniences that you have in your kitchen that we take for granted, I mean, it's just astronomical. And then you also have to think about the sheer cleanup, mayonnaise, ketchup, things that we just open up and take a jar off, all had to be made from scratch. They had to be canned or bottled. So I love history, but I don't know that I would want to be a cook back then.
Yeah. And I thought about hygiene, because even the elegance we read in both books about elegant table settings and things that we wouldn't necessarily expect or Henry even see in Western film. So often the guy behind the bar is sort of suspicious and cleaning something with a dirty apron, but we know that there was opulence also and elegance. But I wondered, yeah, but in the kitchen, are they washing their hands and is there much water? And
I don't know that they really knew about cross-contamination so much back then.
Yeah.
I mean, I think people would wipe their hands off on claws, and they probably, like, if you're cutting up chicken and then you go cut up some fresh fruit, I don't know that they thought about keeping their hands clean.
Yeah.
I think, it had to have, they had to have some kind of sanitary conditions, because otherwise people would be getting really sick all the time.
Right.
So, I mean,
Right.
they may have had, separate boards and separate knives for certain things, which may have really cut down on that kind of thing. But I've never really looked at the specific hygiene. But I know I haven't really read about a lot of stories with people other than, people getting, people didn't really write about getting sick either, though, right?
Right.
It was the Victorian era, so people aren't writing, "Oh my God, I was on the toilet for 6 days after I ate it."
Yeah. So this is the newest book, and you do go to a variety of, as you say, historic hotels and restaurants, and then you like Delmonico's. Just give us a little essence of what was Delmonico's all about. You have several recipes from Delmonico's in the different sections. Just tell us a little bit about Delmonico's.
So Delmonico's is in New York City, for those people who don't know. Delmonico's opened in the early 1800s, and they sort of set the standards for all restaurants today. They were the first to have menus. They were the first to have tablecloths. They were the first to have standards for their waiters. They really were ahead of their time. And they were so well known for all of those things that people would open up restaurants, especially across the West, and they would call it Delmonico's. Even Tombstone had a Delmonico's. It was run by Nellie Cashman, and you see Delmonico's everywhere. And when I was lucky enough to go to Delmonico's before COVID, and they had closed, and I actually got to eat there in one of the original locations. And I got to interview the chef. He came out. He made me all the traditional foods. And I was talking to their marketing manager, and they were like, even a Chinese restaurant was called Delmonico's because everybody knew Delmonico's was synonymous with top quality, with top standards, and so everybody wanted to be like them. So, Eggs Benedict was created by.
And you start the book right off with Eggs Benedict and sort of its history, which was very, very interesting. Mm-hmm. Another restaurant. We want to ask about another restaurant. You want to ask about?
Let's stay with Delmonico's.
Oh, okay.
Tell us about Eggs
Benedict. What's the backstory?
A lot of these recipes, not just from Delmonico's, but a lot of the recipes that were created that are signature dishes came up with somebody that wanted something different. A customer would come in and say, "I'm tired of, eggs over easy, make me something unique." And that's really how Eggs Benedict and how the vichyssoise soup from the Ritz-Carlton came from. That's how the Cobb salad was sort of invented from LA. That was the owner, and the chef, he got tired. He was trying to make himself a late night snack and he raided the fridge. That's how buffalo wings came to be. The woman that was running the bar, her son always had his friends over. They wanted a late night snack. Back then, chicken wings were left over from all the good pieces of the chicken. She had a refrigerator full. She said, "Well, I'm just going to deep fry these things. The boys won't care. They're drinking beer, and voila, we have chicken wings, right?"
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and so that's kind of how a lot of recipes came to be. Just people got tired of traditional things, and a patron wanted something unique. And then you have a new recipe that's like a popular one.
You mentioned talking to the chef, and I think that I have a sense you talk to chefs whenever you can. They'll come out and talk to you. You have a really interesting article about Manhattan clam chowder. And I'm not sure if the camera will really pick this up, but here in the book, you can actually see, it's hard to see, but tell us about how you got this recipe and where is it?
So Manhattan clam chowder, when I was a little girl, there was a place in New Jersey called Dunleavy's. And it's changed names a couple of times, but it was called Dunleavy's. And it was an old tavern made out of log. It was a log cabin tavern, and there was a moose head always over the top of the bar. I think he had like 8 pounds of dust on him. But it was a classic tavern. There were booze. It was a great place. We always went there for our birthdays. And the one thing that I always loved was their Manhattan clam chowder. And I had moved to North Carolina, 30 some years ago, and we had gone back a few times because my mom still lived up there at the time, and we went to Dunleavy's. We had to, it was a tradition. And I really missed the clam chowder. And so I said to the waitress, I said, do you think the chef would let me have the Manhattan clam chowder recipe? And I said, I love it, and I live in North Carolina. And she was like, I'll go ask. So sure enough, she comes back. She comes out with an 8x10 binder this thick. And I don't know if you can see, it was like 3 or 4 inches thick. And they flipped through the clam chowder recipe, and I'm like, okay, great. I have nothing to write on. So they had menus, which is what she was showing you a picture of. I flipped it because it was burgundy on the top. It was white on the back. I'm writing down the recipe as fast as I can because I don't want the chef to be like, okay, what is she doing out there?
Yeah.
And I'm writing the recipe, and it makes like enough for 400 people. And I'm like, how the hell am I going to convert it? I don't care. Just write the recipe down. You'll figure that out later. I had to look up, what is a number 20 can of tomatoes? I mean, who knows what that is? So I still have that placemat in my cookbook at home. And so it's probably the first recipe I've ever asked for, but it certainly has not been the last.
That is so fun.
That is great.
You want to ask about Parker rolls?
Well,
you ask whatever you want.
I want to Coney Island hot dog.
Oh, the Coney Island hot dog.
Invented by a Greek who lived in Detroit. How did that work out?
The Greek man who invented that, he came to America with basically no money. He came into the port of New York. He fell in love with Coney Island. He ended up going out, Michigan, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh,
And he did a few jobs here and there, and then he decided he'd open up a hot dog stand and sell some hot dogs. And he ended up making a traditional chili that the Greeks would make. It's kind of like very thin chopped meat, and it took off like it was crazy. Like he couldn't keep selling them fast enough, and so that's where the Coney Island hot dog came from. The name, though, is after the Coney Island place that he fell in love with, and it was just a nod to how much he really enjoyed. That was the first impression of America when he came here. And when I was interviewing his daughter, of course they wouldn't give me the recipe, but I still included the story. Such a great story to that. And she said, here, Coney Island is a food. In New York, it's a place.
Oh, Coney Island. Oh, is it? Oh, that's a great, yeah.
But I will say this, when she knew what I was doing, she sent me a package, and it included the traditional hot dogs, the rolls, the chili, and an onion. Oh, and a paper hat. The paper hat.
And a paper
I
hat.
had to have the hat, so yeah.
That's pretty good. Henry, did you have any questions you want to ask while we're talking here?
He's just drooling.
Sure. Actually, it's funny because I was just thinking about how in Paper Moon, there's a scene where Ryan O'Neal gets Tatum a hot dog, and he says, sit there and eat your Coney Island. And I go, what was that?
He had it right.
I'm from New York, so I had never heard it referred to as a Coney Island.
Yeah, that's fun.
I'm so happy you have so many New York related recipes in the book, because as I say, I'm from there. Mm-hmm. And I was curious, when you're trying to gather recipes from famous restaurants with a long history, do chefs refuse you?
Yes.
And what do you give up at that point, or do you try and reverse engineer food? Or
no, if they don't want to be a part of the book, I don't want to force them, because there's one recipe in there called Don's Big Mess from Outback.
Right.
And they wouldn't give me the recipe, but they gave me the list of ingredients, not the proportions, but the list of ingredients. And I came up with what I thought would make sense. And I emailed it back to the manager and I said, is this pretty close? Because I want to be able to say, you gave me the list, but I had to come up with my own. And he was like, you're pretty darn close.
That sounds delicious. That
Yeah.
Don's
And
big mess.
there were a couple of people that were just like, no, we're in the middle of changing the business, and we don't want any publicity. We don't want to be involved. And then there was one company, one story that I really wanted the recipe, and it was on their website, but I didn't want to take it without their permission, even though it was in the public domain. I just didn't think that was right. And they kept saying, well, we need you. We'll get back to you. We'll get back to you. And they never did. Well, then I found out that later they were publishing their own book. So,
yeah. So, and this book has beautiful photographs, many of the recipes. And as a amateur cook, a photograph really helps me. It makes me want to make it, but it also helps me know I'm on the right track if I'm making something. How did those photos end up in here?
the photos came from the establishments themselves. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 in there, like the menu from me, and one of the businesses was closed for the season, so I took a photograph and did it. I mean, when I reached out to them, I said, hey, you guys probably have these beautiful professional photographs. If you'd love to give one to me and give me permission to use it with the recipe, I'd love to do that. And just about every one of them, provided them. And you can tell they're stunning photos because they're professionally done.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to have to move on to the next book, but do we want to ask our time travel question? So, yeah, ask the time travel question.
Which one is that?
Well, if you found yourself that you could go to any one of these restaurants in whatever time period you'd like, what restaurant would you like to go dine in?
Do I have to pick just one?
Well, you could pick more than one.
Okay, well, Delmonico's for sure. Just because I would love to go back and meet Chef Ranhofer, who was the chef that made all these wonderful dishes. The Omni Homestead in Virginia, they've been around since our founding fathers used to go bathe in the waters there. And I think to be able to see that in that time period would be very cool. The Palace Hotel in San Francisco, pre-earthquake, to see what it looked like in the 1800s with the open circular courtyard, and to dine on their food. And then there's a place in Georgia called the Sea Island Resort that opened in the 20s, and I would love to be there during that whole flapper era.
Yeah. Henry, where would you like to go?
Oh gosh. Back in New York, I always wanted to eat at Luchow's when it was the place with the liquor license that was #1.
Oh, yeah. There's some good drink recipes in here, Sherry. The zombie had an interesting story behind it. And I almost thought, well, we were thinking maybe we'd make one of those, but we knew we wouldn't be able to be on the air at all. Oh my goodness.
That makes the Long Island iced tea look like a wimp drink.
That's what I thought about when we first looked at that.
And the Mai Tai was out of Don Beachcomber, Hollywood, but there was also one in Hawaii. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Later.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm just looking at time. Oh, okay. Is there something else we want to say about this book before?
Yeah. First, I think we better say if somebody wants to be on the show.
Oh, yes.
How do they do that?
Well, you know how Sherry got on the show? Sherry contacted me through LinkedIn. And she's the only one that's done that so far. And I'm sort of not really good about checking, but when I saw it was Sherry Monahan on LinkedIn, I went right away.
Well, thank you.
So Jim's question, if you are listening or you're enjoying this show and you say to yourself, I'd like to be on that show, or maybe you're a publicist or a literary agent and you say, I have some authors I'd like to have on that show, would you just do this simple thing? Just email me, Bobbi Jean Bell. It's my whole name with an I, Bobbi Jean Bell, the I after Bobby, @gmail.com. And just put in your name and a little basic information. And pretty quickly I'll get back in touch with you and we'll find out what you've got cooking. And we'll see if there's a spot that we can put you in. And the same thing is true if you think.
If you want to be a sponsor, you want to sponsor an activity.
Yeah,
yes,
or a supporter. Yeah. Same thing, BobbiJeanBell@gmail.com, and we'll take it from there. We are booking our fall, and of course, pretty soon we'll be booking 2025. So yeah, give us an email.
We probably better move
We
on
better
to the next
move.
book.
I think so, because we're at 30. We're moving right along.
Right.
So
This is Tombstone, and we actually made 3 dishes from the book.
they were so fun. We had so much fun, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And it came out tasting good.
Oh, we did. And if you want to see us in the kitchen, go to the Rendezvous with a Writer Facebook page, and you'll see pictures. I took a few. I am not a food stylist, nor am I a photographer, nor am I a cook. But we thought we should document it. So we did take a few pictures along the way, and we had such a good time. I think, Jim, when we started with the baked macaroni and cheese.
That's the first thing we made.
That
right?
we made, right, because we were trying to,
Based on timing.
Yes, and I do have them bookmarked in here. But anyway, yeah, based on cooking time.
Then we went to work on the green beans.
So this is the picture of how it is in the book, yes. And then we did the string beans.
Then we did the fried flounder.
Yeah.
Couldn't find flounder at Whole Foods, so we went with Soul.
Yes.
That worked very nicely.
And this is the picture from the book. So tell us about. Well, I'm trying to get the picture, but that's all right. You just need to get the book, and then you need to find the recipes. So do you want to tell us a little bit just about Tombstone and how you chose the recipes to go along in this book?
Sure. So, Tombstone, for people who've been there or haven't been there, it's a real place for those who think it's just a movie set. And I encounter people like that all the time. It was a big mining community. Starting around 1879 through about 1889 was its peak years. And a lot of people made a lot of money with the silver rush. And then, of course, mines got flooded with water. They couldn't pump it out fast enough after the pumps burned out. And Tombstone sort of just went away for a while, and now it's just a great tourist location to go to and really experience some great history.
Mm-hmm.
As I said earlier, I love food and history and writing. And when I got to Tombstone, I talked to you about wanting to write and be connected, but I didn't want to write about the OK Corral. I didn't want to write about Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp. I was thinking that's just way over my head. So I started thinking about what they ate, and that's how the first book came to be. And, as far as choosing which recipes, when I started doing my research, I went to the antique stores in town and I was like, I'm going to find some old menus because then I'll know what they ate. And I ended up finding out that all of the old menus were in a private collection from a person who wouldn't share them. So he's a friend of mine now, longtime friend of mine that owns an antique store, had said to me, well, Sherry, you just need to get some of the old microfilm with the newspapers, because a lot of the bigger places like the Maison Dorée and the Cosmopolitan Hotel, the Grand Hotel, the Russ House, the Occidental, some of the other smaller restaurants would put ads in the newspapers, and it had their whole menu. And it was literally soup to nuts. And if you've ever heard the term soup to nuts, that's where it comes from. It comes from a menu, because you would start with your soup course and then a fish course and then a roast course, and it would go through all of them. And usually at the end, for your final dessert, after you've had your sweet, was usually fruits, cheeses, or nuts. And so that's where that term comes from.
Soup to nuts. There you go. And so the same kind of time traveler question. If you could go to one of those places, where would you go? Where would you pick? You can pick more than one.
Okay, good. I have three.
Okay.
One, I would go to the Grand Hotel, just because it was one of the really nicer hotels, early hotels, which was there until the fire of 1882 and that never rebuilt. But I would love to go there and see it. The other was the Russ House, which was wildly popular. It was run by Nellie Cashman, who was called the Angel of the Camp. She was an Irish woman, a real go-getter, took care of her sister and her sister's children and her children after the sister passed away. And, they just had, traditional fare. She offered German pancakes all the time, so I'd have to get them there. And then the Maison Dorée was in the Cosmopolitan Hotel. Again, from the descriptions of both of the two hotels, it sound fabulous. I would love to be able to step foot in them and see what they really looked like,
Yeah. You uncovered, when I say there's little historical, of course, tidbits and things all through the book. You gave us a little different picture of Ike Clanton than we maybe have from the movies.
Yep. Ike Clanton, in the movies is portrayed as a bully and a buffoon and, not very intelligent. And in fact, Ike Clanton opened probably if not the first, one of the first restaurants in the first location in Tombstone. It was called the Star Restaurant. And you can see I have a letter that he wrote to a friend that he had go into Tucson, which is where all the supplies came from, a very literate letter talking about what he wanted. He was going to pay in greenbacks, and this is what he expected. And if you didn't get this, then, you know, don't do this. And this was the list of the items that he was going to carry. And you look at that, and he was just a businessman at the time. You know, I don't know what made him go into rustling, cattle rustling.
Feed that restaurant.
Or beef, you know, that beef was not on the supply list from Tucson. So.
Yeah, could be.
But yeah, he was not the person that people that Hollywood has portrayed him to be.
Yeah. This has been so much fun, Sherry. I'm just looking at our time. We want to make sure. Tell us, what are you working on next? What can we expect?
I have a new book that's coming out this summer called Victorian Recipes with a Side of Scandal. And that will be, it'll be a traditional, it'll be like the Tombstone cookbook, more like. It'll be traditional cookbook layout, but a lot of sidebar stories about an English woman who came to America in Lake County, California. Oh, so much drama in her life and scandal. And so you just have to wait for the book to come out. And then the spring of 2025, I have another book coming out that I'm working on right now called Favorite Dude and Ranch Recipes. So
what fun. And where can people find you?
SherryMonahan.com.
Very simple. And Jim, you have a quote. You have some quotes.
Where we find Henry?
We're going to ask Henry that in a minute. Let's get, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you have some quotes.
We have quotes. Yes, we do. And this is from the chef that you were talking about, Ron Hofer, of Delmonico Coast, New York City. A man must eat. It is a necessity. Why not make it a pleasure instead of a pain by the consumption of what is unpalatable and a menace to health through indigestion?
A man must eat.
Good food, right?
And whatever you want to do.
Okay, we're at Bowers Meat Market.
And from this book,
October 26, 1881. Dressmaker Mrs. J. King was in Bowers Meat Market at the time of the shooting. While she was choosing what meat to buy, she heard several gunshots. She later testified that she had witnessed Holiday and the Earps passing by while she was in the butcher shop.
That's just kind of an example of the fun things that Sherry includes in the book.
That's one of the first witnesses.
Yeah, she was
I ever heard.
I wondered what meat she decided on.
Now from the famous author Sherry Monahan herself. Tombstone's 19th century restaurants, recipes, and meals were as sophisticated as the town itself. Despite being in a remote desert location, residents and visitors alike ate well. I think the only thing better than reading about its history is being able to taste it. Forks up.
Forks up.
Forks up.
Oh, Sherry, thank you so much for being with us. Henry, where do we find you, and what do you got working on?
Well, let's see. As I said, I'm going to be speaking at the LA Breakfast Club on May 1st. And I'm beyond that. You can, read my book. I wish you would. And, I'm continuing to write for True West magazine. I've got a lot of articles coming up at the INSP blog. Just look at INSP blog, and I write 2 new pieces about Western films every month. Mm-hmm. And you can always reach me at Swan Song Mail. That's about it.
Yeah. And next week, we are going to be talking to a singer-songwriter. So we're going to learn a lot about what goes on for the backstory of crafting songs. And that is Alex Dormont of the Hot Texas Swing Band. His brand new album is Gotta Move. We'll be playing music from 3 of their albums. And he'll be talking about song crafting. And then the week after that, April 18th, we have Helen F. Wand with us. And we'll be talking about, you can see we're already reading it, her book, Echoes of Forgotten Places. And let's see, Jim, what else? Is there something else? Oh, we just need to say our thank yous. Yeah.
Thank you, folks. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Henry. It's been a great show.
Thank you, Sam
you.
Hass and LA Talk Radio. Thank you, all of you that tuned in. And remember, you can catch this as a podcast on your favorite streaming platform. Just give me a few hours to get it up there. And we'll see you.
And remember, it's always a great day out west.
Keep writing, and we'll keep reading. See you next week.